So today I'm gonna talk about the one of my favorite product in Quizcom, which is the org chart. So we'll spend a good amount of time talking about what is the Quizcom org chart and how it works for SharePoint Online as well as Teams. So let's get started. So today I have a very short agenda, but there are a lot of details which I'm planning to cover within the short agenda. So we'll begin by talking about what are the Quizcom DataView tools. Okay, so if at all you haven't heard about this before, or if at all you've browsed across the website and you're coming here and you wanted to know more of the product, so the DataView tool is nothing but a set of SPFX web parts, and we have a lot of tools underneath this. And as I go ahead in this presentation, I'll be talking in detail about all those tools. And then we'll be spending some time talking about org charts, because that is going to be the core meat of today's presentation. We'll be talking about what is an org chart, what are the different type of org charts that you can create using the Quizcom org chart web part, so on and so forth. I'll also be showing a good demo on org charts, how you could design org charts with minimal effort. So you could be someone who's coming from a non-technical background, but still you could, with zero effort, you could simply, with just a couple of clicks, you can go ahead and build a beautiful and wonderful looking org chart. So I'll be talking in detail and I'll show very good demos on that. Then I'll be talking about how you could, if at all you're interested in purchasing the product, so how can you go ahead and configure this in your tenant? And if at all you want to go for a free trial, I'll be talking about that, and at the end we'll be doing the Q&A. So let's move on. So as I said, so the DataView tools for SharePoint is nothing but a set of SPFX web part that is mainly built to answer your common data retrieval and display requirements. So for anybody who has dealt with SharePoint for quite some time, you know what SPFX is, the SharePoint framework. So this tool set is completely built using SPFX. So as I said, the DataView tools is a set of, it's a toolkit which has multiple tools within it. It's the ultimate Swiss Army knife for retrieving and displaying your SharePoint data. So within this tool set, we have the Quizcom List View Plus, which is mainly meant to connect to remote list and display it as if it was local. Then we have the Quizcom Aggregator, which is going to help you to roll up data from a variety of data sources. And of course, we have the Quizcom Picture Gallery, which is going to help you to, sort of arrange pictures and give you a good view. And today we'll also be talking about the Quizcom org chart, so that is also a part of this tool set. Then we have the Quizcom Calendar Plus as well as the Quizcom Charts, which is yet to come. A few screen captures of how this tool would look like, all these tools. So what you're seeing here is the Quizcom org chart, and this will be the focus for our presentation today. And this is the Quizcom aggregator, which could help you to roll up data from variety of data sources. Then we also have the Quizcom Calendar Plus. So this is going to help you to aggregate your events from SharePoint and Exchange calendars. And then the Team Gallery, which is going to help to put multiple images together. And if at all you want to build a gallery kind of a view within your SharePoint site. And we also have the DataView Plus, which is going to help you to, pull data from multiple data sources, and you can sort of render it within your SharePoint site, like how you see here in this PPT, where you can have data coming in from Twitter, LinkedIn, so on and so forth. All right, so with that, let's sort of focus on org chart, which is what we want to discuss today. So the org chart that we have from Quizcom, it's a real-time, highly interactive, user-friendly, and highly customizable org chart application. So as you could see in the screen here, right? So the org chart that you can see here can be built just within few clicks. And when I show the demo, you'll see it for yourself. So you could build the complete hierarchy for your organization, or even for a particular team within your company. And you can have different color codings like you see here, right? So if you notice here, you could see that a particular department has a different side of color coding. If your need is such, you could do that. And also, if a person is reporting to multiple managers, and that could also be a scenario wherein somebody is reporting to a manager, but maybe he's working on a different project, and as a result of that, she's reporting to a different project manager. So even things of that sort can be represented using the Quizcom org chart. And if you want to give a different kind of representation for a particular person, right? If you see here, the assistant here has a different kind of representation as opposed to the other people in the org chart. So even those kind of things are possible. Now, the best part about the Quizcom org chart is it could pull in different type of data sources, right? So in most of the organizations, your Active Directory is your best sort of user database. So that is where your users live. But that may not be the case for everyone, because sometimes your Active Directory may not be your best data source, and you wanna, or maybe you're storing your data in an Excel file stored in SharePoint, or maybe it is coming from Azure AD. So with the power of Graph API, you could pull that and you could start displaying that. Or it could be SharePoint user profiles or SharePoint list. So no matter whatever data source you're using, the Quizcom org chart web part is designed to pull data from different data sources, and you can have it retrieved within your SharePoint site. And these are some core features of the Quizcom org chart. So as I was just talking about, it supports multiple data sources. So you could be using an Excel file as your data source type, graph, a SharePoint user profile list. So it could support everything. And it can also talk to multiple data sources, right? So it's not just that one web part can talk to only one single data source. So within a web part itself, you could have multiple data sources talking, and you could have data being retrieved from different data sources. And it also has multiple layouts and themes. So when I'm doing the designing of the web part, you could see it for yourself. And what if a person is reporting to multiple managers? So as a part of the project, if that is the case, then you could also represent that in the org chart. And also conditional formatting. So based upon certain conditions, you want the data to be formatted. That can be easily done just within few clicks using the org chart. And it's quite easy to find employees because it's got a great search functionality and assistant template. So just in case within the org chart, you want the assistant to be represented with a different, with a different format, then that is something that you could very well define. It's got a lot of configurable actions, and as I go through the demo, you'll be seeing it for yourself. And just in case you want to export the org chart to a PDF, that's also possible. And the best part about this is, since this is completely built using SPFX, it's not just only meant for SharePoint, right? It could also be pushed to Teams if your need be so. Now, based upon wherever your people are, if SharePoint is your core collaboration tool within your company, then of course you could go ahead and use the SharePoint org chart. And maybe a lot of maybe you as a company have transformed and all your employees are using Teams, then no problem at all. It could also be used within Teams. And of course, you could also place employee placeholders. So these are some core features. So with that, let me dive into the demo. So as a part of the demo, there are a few things which I want to show in the demo. I'll just talk about that, then I'll just quickly switch on to the demo. So in the demo, we are going to first look at the company org chart. So how an entire organization can be represented using the Quizcom org chart web part. Then we'll also be talking about how you could create a directory or just think of like an employee directory, like a list. How can that be done using the org chart? We'll also be looking at that. And what if you want to just sort of represent only a single department in a SharePoint site, right? Just think of a scenario wherein you have multiple SharePoint sites and each department has its own SharePoint site. So for, let's say, the SharePoint site, which is meant for engineering, you want to display only the engineering department. If that is your need, then we could very well do that as well. And also you could have your personal org chart. Maybe you're the manager and in the SharePoint site, you want to define your own org chart. That is also very well possible. And this is how we would be doing stuff. So in the demo, we'll try to understand like how you would go ahead and add the web part to the page. How can you connect to multiple data sources, do the column mapping, and all the other controls. Just a few screenshots about what we are going to look in the demo. So this is sort of the company directory that I spoke about, and you could have multiple such search options wherein you can search based on a given criteria through the manager name, through the job title, and also you have good categorizations as such, which can be done using the web part. And so this is how you would see the org chart for a specific department. So in this particular screenshot here, you're seeing the org chart for R&D. So we'll be seeing this also in the demo. So with that, let me move on to the demo so that I can show all of this in action. All right, so here I am on my SharePoint site. Okay, so I'll just walk you through whatever has been currently built, and then I'll build everything from the scratch so that you could follow whatever I'm doing. Okay, so for the purpose of this session today, I have 3 key demos. So the first thing is how you could build an org chart using the SharePoint list as a data source. So I'll just quickly open this up for you. So as you could see here, right? So let me spend a minute talking about this web part and what all it has, and also my data source. Okay. So my data source here is a SharePoint list. So there's nothing but I've just created employee list as my data source, wherein I have columns such as employee name, position, department, manager, and you could define other columns also if your need is such. But as I said, this is mainly meant for organizations who don't have a proper Active Directory setup, and you're heavily relying on a SharePoint list as your data source. So if you see here, you could see that this particular gentleman here has a manager, and he's also reporting to a different person. And you could also have your assistant defined here. So this is sort of my data source. And let me just go back to the web part, which I just showed here. Yep. And if you take a look at this, right, so you could see that this particular person here has a different representation, and there are different color codings. Okay, so just a given department within this org chart is defined within a different color, right? And when I click on this particular person, you can take a good look at the people card which shows up, and you could see all the controls here. So like view profile, the title, and all the other attributes that you could see here. Okay, and it just doesn't end here with all these controls that you could see. The LinkedIn profile can be attached to your Twitter, and all the other social controls, the phone number, email, everything can be defined here. Okay, and so this is how you would see the details in the web part. Now let me just go ahead and build this complete thing for you so that you could see how easy it is to go ahead and use this web part, even with somebody who has zero SharePoint knowledge. Now, this is a new SharePoint site altogether, right? So I'm going to go ahead and build that web part once again from scratch. So for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to create a new SharePoint page, and I'm going to call this as SPO list as a data source. Okay, I'll go ahead and add a new web part. So, and this is the web part that I'm going to use. So org chart. So let me go ahead and configure my data source. So I click on this. So this is how, these are the different kind of controls that I would get. I'm going to go ahead and click on add a data source. And for the sake of a demo here, I'm going to call this data source as employee list. So this is where I'm going to use the SharePoint list, which I just showed you. And on the data source type, I'm going to define my type as a SharePoint list because it is a list which lives within SharePoint. And take a look at this here, right? So you could have your source sitting within the same SharePoint site, or it could be sitting in a different SharePoint site also. Now, for the sake of our demo here, I'm going to pick this SharePoint list, which is sitting on a different SharePoint site altogether. Okay, so that you could see it for yourself. I'll just go ahead and put it here, and let me choose the SharePoint list. So the name of the SharePoint list which I have is employees. And then you could define the view, right? And if you take a look at the column mapping, it would automatically map all the columns. So that's something good about this web part because it automatically maps all the columns. And just in case if there is something that you want to change, you could also do that, because for the reports to column, I want to map it to the report to column also, like this. Okay, could go ahead and do that. And you could also use the color coding if you need be so. I'll just go ahead and close this off, and I'm gonna hit on publish. So this is how it looks like. Okay, so just by adding the web part itself and just putting in the SharePoint list, it built a beautifully looking org chart for you. But we are not done yet. So there is a lot of customization that you could do here. For that, let me just go ahead and edit this page once again. Okay, and let me click on the settings gear here. Okay, so what you're currently seeing here is the simple mode. So there are two different modes that you can use to edit. So you have the advanced mode as well as the simple mode. Okay, so the simple mode is something which gives you very minimal customization controls. Okay, if you just want to just do minimal amount of customization. For instance, you could choose how many number of levels you want to show up underneath your in the hierarchy, right? If it has to be 3, then you could go ahead and define 3. And you could also define the orientation. Should it be top down or should it be left to right? You know, these kind of. So as I click, you could see that it's quite responsive, because as I click, it starts rendering here. Okay, there are multiple options that you could try. I'm going to go with top down because I like it very much. And the layout is also something that you could try. You could try the tree layout, or maybe you could try normal like this. So whatever best suits you. And then we also have multiple such templates, whether you want to use the colored rectangle, or just a rectangle, okay, or you want to use the round label. So many such controls, so whichever suits you, whichever you're comfortable with, you could go ahead and do that. I think I'm going to use round label because I kind of like it. And then you could also define, what information needs to be displayed. So here it is just name and position, but just in case you also want the email address and something else also to be defined, you could very well go ahead and do that also. Now these are all the controls that you have within the simple mode, but let me switch to advanced mode here. There is a lot of other things that you could do with the advanced mode. Okay, so say for instance, uh, if you want to take off the zoom controls, right? Let me just republish this. Okay, so as I go down, you could see that this is, you could zoom it, you could zoom out, and you could also, if you want to if you want to enable that, or if you want to turn that off, you could do everything from here. Let me go back here, and I would say switch to advanced mode. And if you want to increase the content height, if you want to set it to 600, you could do that. And zoom controls, if you want to turn it off, you could do that, right? And search, so if you want to have the search, you could go ahead and keep it on, or if you do not want the search, you can go ahead and turn it off as well. And if you go all the way down, right? So if at all you remember in the beginning of the session, I was talking about all these card actions, wherein for every single profile, you could see LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and so on, right? But what if you as an org would like to bring in your own custom controls? So that is also something which this web part supports. So for that, you could just simply click on the add. So go in here, and you could define all the item actions. So if you're somebody who is quite comfortable with JavaScript, you could go ahead and do that. Maybe you want to show the user's city, you could go ahead and use that. And any other custom controls that you want to bring in, you could very well do that using this. Okay, I'm just gonna leave it as it is, and I'll say close. And the best part is this can be shifted towards your right side also. Whatever you're comfortable with, feel free to go with that option. So I'll go ahead and close this, and I'm gonna say republish. All right. So now we'll go ahead and do a few more customizations to this. Okay. Let me go ahead and add some sort of conditional formatting to this. Yeah, let me turn this on. All right, so Conditional formatting is a very important piece when it comes to this web part, because you want to display your information or the users and hierarchy based upon certain conditions, right? So maybe, as I was talking in the beginning, you want a particular department to be represented with a different color coding, right? So if that is your need, just see how you could do that here. So I just clicked on this, and I'm gonna choose a color for a given department, and I'm going to go with red. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, now the moment I choose red, you could notice that everything underneath changed to red. Now that is because I haven't really specified any condition yet. So now I'm going to specify the condition. Okay, now let me go ahead and mention the condition. So I'm going to say that if your department is equal to engineering, then I want this particular color code to be applied. Now, as I just do it, just take a look at this, it automatically changed. So now you could see that it's just a particular department which is represented using a different color coding. Okay. And so let me go ahead and republish this, and let's see. Yeah, take a look at this. So everything comes up very beautifully. Okay. And now, if at all you wanna, use a different kind of representation for a given person, right? Now, if you take a look at this, right? So Patty here is the CEO of the company. And what if you want a different kind of representation for her, right? So you could very well come in here, click on this edit box, right? And choose a specific theme for her, right? And maybe you wanna represent her with Squire, maybe, like this. Looks good. And also for the assistant, right? Maybe you want the assistant to be represented differently so that people know that so Grady here is the assistant. Maybe you could also do card with 3 lines of text, whatever works, like this. Okay, I'll go ahead and say republish. Good. Now take a look at this. And you also got some good export options here. Now, if at all you want to export this complete org chart, then you could very well go ahead and export this using this option here. So just click on export to PDF. You could also get a preview of how this is gonna look like before you export it, and you could go ahead and start exporting that. Okay. Okay. So, and you could also just get a different view. So like this, it displays everything. And this is the employee list where you could see everything, and click on employee list. It shows up all the people in the hierarchy. And when I click on engineering, it's going to display the engineering folks alone with a different color coding. Okay. So that sort of gets us through the first demo of whatever I just showed you in the SharePoint site, which I just showed you before. So now let me go ahead and I'll show you the next scenario which I want to bring up. Okay. So in the next scenario, what I'm going to show you is how you could use your Azure AD Graph API as the data source and build an org chart. Okay. So just take a look at this here. So this is using Azure AD as a data source. Okay. So in the previous example, we were using SharePoint list as your data source. So this time we are going to use Azure AD as a data source. And you could also, within the same web part itself, you could have 2 display groups like this, and also the complete directory kind of view. And you could have multiple search options wherein you can search based on the manager name. Maybe, okay, Patty. It's going to give you everybody who is having Patty as their manager. Now, let's go back to our demo here. So in this website, I'll try to build this complete thing which you just saw using the web from the scratch. So for this, let me go ahead and create a new page, and I'm going to call it as using Azure AD Graph API as a data source. Okay. And let me go ahead and add the web part, org chart. I'm gonna click on this. So it's the same step, just that the data source that we will be choosing this time is gonna be different. I'm gonna call this as Graph API. And the data source type, this time I'll be choosing Graph API, okay? And then I come in here and I'm gonna load graph examples. I'm just gonna say Azure AD Org Chat users. And the moment I do that, it would automatically go ahead. Just give me a minute. I'll just do this from scratch. Yeah, it already came up. Let me do this once again because that was a minor glitch there. Let me get rid of this and I'll do it from scratch. Org chart, configure your data source, add a data source name. Let me call it as Graph API, data source type, Graph API, and let me load the graph examples like this. Yep. Now, as it just, you could see that here, it already started displaying the pictorial representation of this. And if you go to the column display settings, it has automatically started, managing the columns. And just in case you want to do the column mapping, if something was not brought in correctly, you could very well go ahead and do that. Okay, just go ahead and click on Republish here. Okay. Now, I'm not going to spend too much of time talking about the different controls which I just showed you on the simple and advanced mode, because this is something which we just saw in the previous demo. I'm going to turn off the zoom controls, this, and also the export. You go ahead and republish. Okay. I'm going to give this a different layout. So layout, this time let it be normal, and I'm going to give it a round label. Okay, good. All right. So now what we'll try to do here is, as I was showing in the previous demo, right? You might have noticed some sort of categorizations here and different filters and also a directory tab within the same web part itself. So let's try to configure that. And just in case, if you also want to bring in few more filter controls, you could also do that. Now, say for instance, if you want to put a filter based upon department, or if you want to put a filter based upon manager name, you could very well do that here, so that the users who are visiting your org chart can go ahead and do the search based on that. If I say engineering, it's only going to display the engineering org. So, and also if they want to do a search based upon the manager name, then they can very well do that, so that it displays everybody who is reporting to that manager. Okay. All right. So now we'll look at how we can bring in the categorizations which I just showed you. So for that, let me go ahead and bring in a new control. So we have a new control here called as tabs. So let me click on this. So when I click on tab, so you would get an option as such. And the best part about this entire web part is it has a good Lego style of formatting, right? So you've got a setting option for this, then you've got a setting option for this, and then you've got a setting option for this, and then you've got a setting option for this. So based upon whatever you want to customize or control, you would click on the appropriate setting icon, and then you can go about controlling or changing it. Okay, now if you do not want this particular piece, you could just simply go ahead and click on delete, so that it's just that particular section within the web part that's going to get removed and not the entire web part. Okay, so here I want to bring in some controls. So I clicked on tab, and here I have an option here which says group by. So I'm going to group based upon the department. Now, the moment I click on this, just take a look at it. It just automatically brought in this control. I'll just go ahead and say republish. So now just click on executive board. So it's going to display everybody reporting to the CEO, which is basically the entire org. And for IT operations, it's going to showcase it just the thing. So it's brought in this good categorization. So based upon every single department, you could just go ahead and view the people who are part of that particular department. Okay, so we are not just done yet. We also want to add the directory display to this. So for that, let me just go ahead and add in a new control. We go to the data source here and display group. So this is something which we haven't talked about before. And that's a very good explanation about what display group means. So the name itself says it's gonna help you to display your data in two different tabs, right? It could be different data in two different tabs within the same web part itself, so that you don't need to build two different web parts to display two different data. So let me go ahead and add a display group. So I'm going to call this as org chart. So this is the existing org chart that you're seeing. And the data source for this is going to be Graph API. And you could also choose who the targeted audience should be. So should everybody be seeing that particular display group, or do you want to customize it and make sure that it is only a given set of people who want to see it? So those kind of functionalities can be very well defined. And I'm also going to add one more display group called as directory. And I'll add a data source here, same Graph API. So now that we have two display groups here, so I'll go ahead and say republish. So basically, if you take a look at this, right? So org chart is one display group, and now directory is also one display group, right? But if at all you've seen in the previous web part that I just showed you, this was in a different view. So it was in a directory kind of a view. So let's go ahead and start doing that customization now. So I'll click on directory because this is, we want it to be displayed in a directory format. Click on this. Okay. I'll switch to the advanced mode. And this time I'm going to click on this and choose table because I wanted this to be displayed in a tabular format. So the moment I choose this, just take a look at how automatically it changes, and also the options that you see underneath changes. So what you need to understand is for each and every single option that you choose here, the options that you see down keeps changing, okay? So that you get to customize for each and every single control that you choose. And just go ahead and keep it like this. And you could also go ahead and start arranging the columns about how you want that to be displayed. And now for my demo here, I want the name to be displayed first. Then I want the user's email address. Then I want the user's maybe department. Then maybe the manager name. Then the mobile phone. Yeah, so that's all I wanted. And let me go ahead and click on republish. So now what you're basically seeing is just the same web part, but with different display groups. So this is the core org chart in a good pictorial representation, and then here is the directory. Okay, and just in case you want to see the entire directory, you can just come in here and you could completely get rid of the tab on this particular display group. You can just go in here and you can just go ahead and remove that particular tab. If you need is that, I'll just go ahead and get rid of this. So that is gone. Okay, and there are a few more things that you could do here. What if you want to put in some sort of search buttons here, so that when you come in here, you could also have a good search option. So let's see how we can do that. Click on directory. Okay, so I'm gonna do conditional formatting, and you could add some search controls. You could put in a a new condition, and you could say that I want to search based upon, or maybe I want to put in a new search option here. I'll put in a new filter option here rather than this filter. Yeah, you could do like this. And then maybe I want to put a filter based on manager name. I want to put in one more filter based upon the department. And I'll just go ahead and publish this. Okay. Now it looks even more better. So I can come and do a free search. I can search on anything that I want. Then this is a search which is specific only to the manager name, and this is a search which is specific only to the department. Okay, so if I want to search for IT operations, then it's going to display the information, the people who are part of the IT operations. Okay, so this is our second demo wherein you could use your Azure AD Graph API as a data source, and you could represent two different, you could have two different display groups within a single web part. Okay, so now just going back to the previous SharePoint site. So our last demo here is how you can display only a single department and also the vacancy within a department. Now that is something which is very interesting because that is not something which you get to see quite often, right? Normally an org chart is all about people, it's all about hierarchy, but there is no, I haven't seen any org chart which also gives you a proficiency to even display the vacancies within the department. So if you take a look at this, so this particular web part only displays the given department, which is engineering, and it also displays the vacancy. So let's go ahead and try to build this from scratch. So, and for the sake of this demo, let me just create a new SharePoint page. Okay, create page. I'm going to call this as displaying specific department. Not what I wanted. Yep. Okay. I'll go ahead and add the web part here. Org chart. I'll click on configure data source. I'll add a new data source. So this time, even before I get started with the demo, right, I want to talk about one more SharePoint list, which I'll be using in this demo. So for that, let me go back to the previous SharePoint site. Okay, so I spoke about the employee list. In the first demo, we were using this as a data source. And then I also have prepared one more list called as a vacancy list. So this is also a SharePoint list. And this is what I'm going to use in the demo, which I'm going to do now. Okay, so this is also a SharePoint list. And here I've given the employee name, the position, the manager. So what we are basically going to do in the next demo is we are going to use two different data sources within one single web part. Okay, I want to get rid of this. It didn't quite come up properly. I'll go back to home, try to create a new page here. Page. Okay. Displaying vacancy within a department. I'm going to call it like this. And let me go ahead and add the web part. Click on configure the data source, add data source. So I'm going to use Graph API as my first data source. Choose type. I'll use Graph API and I'll load the graph example. So yep, it should just start loading the org chart here. So this is something which I've just walked you in the previous demo. And as I said, we are going to add one more data source here. As I just showed you the vacancy list data source, I'm going to add that here. So this is how you could add two different data sources within one single web part. I'm going to call this as vacancy list. So the data source type this time is going to be a SharePoint list. Okay. And I'm going to bring in the list from a different SharePoint site because this exists in a different SharePoint site. I'll bring this here, and let me also choose that SharePoint list. So the name of the SharePoint list is vacancy list. Okay. And you could also, if you take a look at the column mapping here, you could see that it's not all the columns which has a mapping, right? It's just got the employee name, position, manager, because it's not really a real person there, right? It's just a vacancy list that we have prepared. What you could also do to make it look, so that when people are viewing your org chart, you want the vacancy to be displayed uniquely, right? So that you could give a different color coding for that. So I'm going to choose a different background color. Let's see, yellow. It looks something more to define a vacancy. I'll choose that. Now let me go ahead and hit republish. Okay. Yep, there you go. So you could see that it's just the vacancy alone which has been displayed separately here. And this is how you could use two different data sources within one single web part here. Okay. And let's go ahead and do some more customization to this so that we could complete the demo. Click on this. So top down, yeah, I'm good with that. Normal, I'm good with that. I'll use round label. Okay. This is all good. This is something which you have even seen before. But what we basically want to do here is we want to just display one single department and the vacancy within that department. So that's what I showed you in the previous SharePoint site. So let me go ahead and do that here. So for that, let me add in a new control. I'll put in a filter. Okay. So I'm going to put in the filter as department, and the department which I want to display is engineering. So let me go ahead and just display engineering here. And we are not done yet, because if you take a look at this, we have just done it. So, and we want this option to be saved for any person who is visiting this site, right? So you could just go ahead and say, it says save for everyone or save only for me. You could just say save for everyone, so that any person who is visiting this website will only be seeing the engineering org chart like this. So just think of a scenario wherein this is a SharePoint site which is only meant for the engineering team, and you want only the engineering related information to be displayed. So you could very well go ahead and do that also. Okay. So that's the end of our third demo. So I have a few more slides to show. I'll just go with that, and then we'll be done with our session today. Okay, so I'll spend a couple of minutes talking about the configuration. So how can you go ahead and import the package inside your tenant as a tenant admin? Okay, so for that, here I am on the SharePoint Admin Center. So you could just go to Quizcom website, and you could download the package for the Quizcom DataView tool from the, just get rid of this, data visualization tools. Yeah. They've got a pretty good documentation where you can read about configuration. So any doubts, the complete KB, everything has been very well defined here. So you could just come in here and install the DataView Tools package. So just click here, just download this package to your computer, and then you have to log in as your SharePoint admin here. So just click on more features. So click underneath apps. Go to your app catalog, because the app catalog is the place wherein you could have all your custom apps, and just click on apps for SharePoint. And what you need to do is you just need to upload the package that you just downloaded. Okay, so just upload it, just click on this, and then you could just say that I want this to be pushed to all the SharePoint sites in my tenant. You could also work with your SharePoint admin in your organization so that he could do this for you. And as I said, this is just not meant for SharePoint. You could also extend this tool to Microsoft Teams also. For that, just click on this, go to Files, and you would see an option here which says Sync to Teams. So click on Sync to Teams. So the moment you do it, you could see the app on the Teams App Store. And then you can just come to your team and just click on a channel and simply go ahead and add that app. So this is how it would look at in the Teams App Store. Just click on Add, it'll get added, and then basically this entire thing, the entire web part or all the customizations which I just did using it can be done inside Teams as well. Okay. And if you're interested in subscribing for the free trial, you could just go to the website, click on the app, and you have an option to subscribe for the free trial. And it's got a pretty good documentation on how you could go ahead and enable the free trial for your tenant. Okay. All right, so that's all we have from my end. So if at all you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat so that I can start answering them. Thank you so much.